office, Raman saw a signboard with the words, Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science written on it. This was a turning point in the life of C.V. Raman, and an incredible research career was born. Most of his early work was on the study of vibrations and sounds of stringed instruments. He studied the violin, the Indian veena, and the tantara. He also studied two uniquely Indian percussion instruments, the tabla and the mridangam. In the first 10 years of his research career, working almost alone, he published 27 research papers. In 1917, Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee, then the Vice-Chancellor of Calcutta University, offered him the Palith Chair Professorship in Physics. At the age of 29, he resigned from his lucrative civil service job and joined the University of Calcutta. In 1924, he was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society, only the fourth Indian to be so honored. Analysis of light scattered by a liquid is not easy. Much of Raman's early work in Calcutta was done by the visual observation of color rather than precise measurements of the light's wavelength. The violet light of the solar spectrum was isolated with a violet filter and passed through a liquid sample. Most of the light emerging from the liquid sample is the same color as the incident violet beam. This is the so-called Rayleigh.
I'm sorry, there is some audio.
Kamalika, please unmute yourself.
A new type of secondary radiation in 1928. He wrote, "It is a phenomenon whose universal nature has to be recognized." The phenomenon quickly came to be known as the Raman effect. 3 years later, Raman left Calcutta for Bangalore, where he served as the head of the Indian Institute of Science. He continued his work on Raman effect and became interested in the structure of crystals, especially diamond. In 1934, he founded the Indian Academy of Science and began the publication of its proceedings. He established the Raman Research Institute in 1948. He was there until his death in 1970. In a scientific career spanning nearly 7 decades, he wrote over 475 scientific research papers, an incredible feat even by today's standards. He was a great teacher and motivator. He lectured ardently, and his popular science lectures held the most diverse of audiences spellbound. He built institutions of excellence and created vibrant research groups wherever he went. He was a man of science in the most complete sense. His towering scientific achievements and his constant striving for excellence under the most adverse of circumstances serve as a constant reminder to us. What matters is one's devotion to the task at hand. In his words, the most important, the most fundamental, and the deepest investigations are those that affect human life and activities most profoundly. Only those scientists who have labored not with the aim of producing this or that, but with the sole desire to advance knowledge.
So that was the documentary, after which we should remember the quote by C.V. Raman, I feel. The essence of the scientific spirit is to realize what a wonderful world it is that we live in. Now, the draft of the 5th National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy stresses on open science, open educational resources, etc., in which IGNOU has been doing path-breaking work. To involve our learners in this celebration of National Science Day 2021, School of Sciences invited posters on the theme Skills and Innovations in Science, and 66 students participated in it, who will be, and we will be presenting a selected few of them, and they will be given participation certificates. All of them will be provided participation certificates.
Please share your screen.
मोनिका ध्यान नहीं आ रहा.
Is there a problem? I will.
Please share your
We
screen.
cannot. Yeah, please share your screen.
Yeah, I'm sharing, but it's not happening.
No, it's not visible.
Shivalakshmi, I'm sharing, but it's not coming. This is shared. It's not shared. So let us wish all these science enthusiasts the very best to enhance their scientific zeal. The School of Sciences, IGNOU, has organized for a panel discussion on the theme Science, Education, Skills and Innovations. On this occasion, I request our Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Nageshwar Rao, to deliver his inaugural address. Sir.
My sincere best wishes to all of you on the occasion of National Science Day. And today I see that the enthusiasm, the zeal which is there amongst all my colleagues, it is really appreciable. Director School of Sciences must be complimented for taking this initiative and to have an interactive session with the panelists, Nagarjuna ji, who is in TIFR Mumbai on Homi Baba Center for Science Foundation, Dr. Devapriya Datta, Head and Scientist G, TST, Government of India, and Professor Ashok Nagawat, Director Skill Education, Rajasthan Skill University, Jaipur. 3 different places, 3 distinguished guests, and there will be enough food for thought to all of us. And we all will be benefited by the presence of Professor Praveen Sinclair, who has kindly consented to be the moderator for this session. Today, on this day, we all are remembering the founder, the man who inspired all of us, C.V. Raman Sahab, to have this day to be celebrated, to bring enthusiasm, to bring zeal amongst all of us. Science, it talks about cause and effect relationship. It talks about rational. It talks about justification. And even in the social sciences also, the word science is relevant there. So there may be physical sciences, but beyond that, we are having the social sciences also. There also the cause and effect relationship. And when we look at the researches, they bring result only once we go for this scientific approach. And that is which is being remembered today, that this spirit, it must be continued amongst all of us. Earlier, we used to have the exhibition wherein young students, they used to present their quality research work before all of us, young children also and the senior people. But due to COVID-19, this year we could not have that sort of exhibition. But the School of Science has tried to put the things in a different format, that is e-exhibition, and the posters, they have been invited from the students to show the spirit, to show the enthusiasm of this scientific temper amongst all of us. This is a great beginning. School of Sciences is doing very well. Recently, they all are devoting a lot of time to revise their syllabi. Now, the CBCS syllabi is almost ready. Some of the disciplines in the School of Science, they have agreed to go even for the post-graduation courses also, because time has come when we have to show that we also can do the post-graduation in the open and distance learning mode. When we see that the scope of open and distance learning is constantly being reduced to select disciplines, engineering, law, agriculture, pharmacy, medical science, so many areas, they all were kept out of the domain of this open and distance learning. But the science, the social science, humanities, management, there we do have a lot of scope to do the things in a much better way. All the schools of this university, they all are exerting hard. I'm happy to note that most of the faculty of the School of Sciences, they're also using our Swayam Prabha channels and continuously trying to reach the learners directly with their words of wisdom. Young faculty members, they also come forward to go for the Swayam courses. And the use of technology, because when you look at even the UK Open University, I do remember in 2015, there was a presentation made by the professors of UK Open University, wherein they said that how the technologies can be used for having our labs to reach to the learners, and they all are using it. So the technology has got a greater role to play in our teaching learning process, and that also we have to see that how we can use it in a much better way to reach to our distant learners. When the national education policy is talking of attaining the GER target of 50% from the existing 26%, wherein we all have to play a greater role. I wish that the School of Science will rise to the occasion and contribute significantly to this particular cause. And today, when we listen to these great speakers, we will have the insights, and those insights you can use it to strengthen our base of teaching learning process to reach our learners in a much better way. Wishing you all the best on this occasion. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your motivating words and inspiring, sir. Sir, I would like to announce that this is the beginning of the activities we, I think, School of Sciences would like to, with your encouragement, will be starting more activities for learners and our peers. And we are planning for a workshop also for encouraging projects to the university, which is one of the findings of the evaluation of the NAC committee also. So we would like to have some project workshop also to be organized. Next, our plan is for that, sir. And with all your encouraging words, I'm sure that our faculty will try all our efforts to have a university to maintain our grade also, sir. Yeah, that is. And now I take, sir.
Wishing you all the best. Please keep it up.
Thank you very much, sir. And can I take this now opportunity to especially welcome Dr. Nagarjuna from Homi Baba Center. Namaste, sir, to this panel listing, and Dr. Ashok Nagawat, sir. Namaste, sir. And Dr. Devapriya Datta. Namaste, sir. So I think now Professor Parveen Singh will start the sessions of panel discussion. And yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaskar to everybody. We now move to the panel discussion. As Professor Verma has just said, the genesis of the theme today, which is science education, particularly skills and innovation, the genesis lies in the new national education policy that has come into play in our country and the recently put up draft of the STIP, Science, Technology and Innovations Policy, that the DST has put up. Of course, the DST focus is on the science, technology and innovations. So the school thought it a good idea to use this occasion, the National Science Day, to get together thoughts of various people in the area who are working in the area, expertise in this area, for recommendations that we can gather and maybe take forward. that is the idea behind this panel discussion. So it's not just a discussion for the sake of discussion, but our aim is to take points further from here. So today we start with Professor Nagarjun, he has an immense body of multidisciplinary approach to science education. Well, I don't know, Nagarjun's right in front of me on the screen, a very interesting person who I happen to have known for many years. So that's why I can really, say how useful it is to have an expert like him on the panel today. His background is he started with biology. His master's was in biology, and then he moved on to studying philosophy of science. The PhD was from philosophy of science, but then his interest went further into cognitive science and how the brain functions and so on. So it was this interface really between the brain and the brain, which is a network, IT. And more and more, he got more and more involved in various aspects of how to use IT for understanding cognition, and not just that, the social aspects and the political aspects of IT also, and he was one of the forefront movers of free and open software in India. In fact, I think, Nagarjun, you're currently chairing the Free Software Solutions of India, and a group in India that you formed. When I was at the NCRT, of course, we made great use of his expertise in these areas. He has also developed, well, we pronounce it as Gnosis or GNOWSYS, a node-oriented computing system, which is part of the GNU project. GKnowledge.org is a community portal developed by him. More than 10 years ago, it was launched, and it keeps developing further. So his interests are really, as I said, across the board, and any intern, anybody who has interned with him will vouch for a wonderful mentoring by him. So therefore, I find it appropriate that he was asked to give his thoughts today on how science education can be molded to inculcate creativity and innovative thinking. He will do this for 15 minutes. But before I hand over to him, I would just like to say, if anybody has any questions to ask, please direct them to me through chat throughout the talks by the three panelists, and then we will discuss the questions at the end with them. I hope that's all right with everybody. So over to you, Nagarjun.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sinclair. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just trying to share the screen for 1 second.
Yeah, it's come on.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, yeah, thank you so much for this invitation, and I find it very, very important and quite topical, and I'm very happy to share this on this special occasion when we're actually discussing and celebrating the day is a National Science Day. So today I thought I would share certain aspects of design as well as developing, and how we can, reimagine, because a lot of reimagination ideas are coming through. A lot of discussions are happening across in the country. Also timely because we just had the new education policy being released, and we also just heard about science, technology, innovation policy also being released recently. So it's possibly the right occasion to think certain aspects about how we take this forward. So before we take it forward, I think it's a very important idea to also get some good understanding about where we are in terms of both science education as well as in understanding where we place skills and innovation in our curriculum. So from that point of view, I just thought of keeping the reality check, but at the same time, we also have to keep our goals very clear, keeping the goals in mind. That is, the context is better understood from the point of view of what are our goals. So in terms of, in general, there is this interesting proposal. It is not just in India, but also across the world. People are moving from content and conceptual understanding to various other things which academies across the world have left out as a part of the academic education, which includes life and career skills, learning and innovation skills, as well as the various other aspects related to media, the role of media in education. And so this is often discussed, and a lot of emphasis of many of these 21st learning goals are also being placed in our education policy. And also to keep in mind the SDG goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, because science education must also keep in mind that what is this education for? What kind of important problems of the society that we would be trying to address, and what kind of challenges do we have? So these are, I think, both the learning goals and the development goals. So we need to connect the learning goals to the sustainable development goals, because these include a lot of important ideas. There are about 17 of them, as many of you know. All of you are quite informed about all these aspects, which also includes inclusion, gender equality, solving problems like hunger, health, and sanitation and things like that. So there's absolutely, undoubtedly, all these goals have to be met, and the most importantly, this can be done only by participation at a very large level. And therefore, keeping these things in mind, I would like to reflect on certain important things of where are we today. And when we are asking we are talking more in terms of India. So let me just ask this question. For example, I would just like to use this theme because some of the recommendations that I would give would be based on this theme of, are we a consumer or are we a producer? And keeping that in mind, I would like to just get an idea about how good are we in terms of being a consumer and producer in the global scenario. So let's look at this particular website, which actually tells you the internet statistics. And I hope you'll be able to see. Let me just increase the size a little bit so that you get an idea. As you can see, on the top 20 countries are listed here. And India is number 2 in terms of the internet usage. And number 1 being China, and third is United States. So this is a very interesting scenario, and the numbers actually show that, in fact, it is only in the last decade that about 11,200% of growth actually took place. It's an unimaginable kind of growth that is actually happening in terms of this. On one hand, this is a very interesting thing to note, that we are quite good and we are also on the top of the world. But let us keep in mind that we are on the top of the world in terms of consumption here, not in terms of producers, because most of the content that is being consumed by us as internet users, and also all the devices that we use for being part of this internet, are not actually produced by us. They're not shaped by us. They're not regulated by us. And that is an important aspect that we need to remember when it comes to whether we are a producer or a consumer by being on the top of the world. So we are one of the topmost consumers of the world, and that is what the first story tells us. Let us look at the second story. The second story is from Wikipedia. So as you can see, English language has about 6 million articles. And Hindi and Marathi are listed here because as a user, Wikipedia is intelligent that somebody from India is actually accessing. Otherwise, none of the Indian languages actually deserve to be there on the top of these 10 languages that are shown here. As you can see, Hindi barely has 145,000 articles on Wikipedia. And Marathi is just 70,000 articles. In fact, there are other languages like Malayalam and Bangla which have a very large number of articles. So why am I talking about this is because it actually gives you an idea about the production and consumption patterns of Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is a place of production. People collaboratively co-create knowledge and document the human history of all kinds of things and in all the languages. Of course, there is no doubt that 10% of Indians actually are consuming English, but then there are about 90% of us who are not being able to access these 6 million articles which are in Wikipedia in English. So there is an important need for all Indians to be producers in a sense. So therefore, the second story also clearly tells you that we are more consumers when it comes to even Wikipedia, and we are not actually anywhere in terms of the thing. Often, of course, we hear that India is on the top of the world when it comes to software development. But again, though we are very proud to talk about it, but this particular story, for example, gives you that most of the producers of the software are actually located in various parts of the place. Of course, India is not completely absent, as you can see. India has producers, but you can see the density and particularly keeping in mind the population. China has large clusters of software producers for the world, and whereas India, the clusters are just forming. And that sort of gives you a kind of an idea about where we are in terms of those things. So I just wanted to give this idea, saying that we are getting there, but we actually need to focus quite a lot on our production patterns, not so much on consumption patterns. And we are not completely behind. As you can see, the list of countries by GDP, India is right here in the 6th position. And so it's not completely disappointing, but then there is a lot of gap, as you can see on the graph. And so this is just gives you some kind of an idea about where we are. And therefore, the challenge before us is quite huge. And now the question comes about us as some kind of a reflection about our own academies, how our academies are promoting consumption habits. I mean, in the sense that this is a very critical reflection. Of course, there are a lot of important and positive things to talk about Indian academies as well. But I would like to make some of these things because we are interested in innovation and skill development, and that is one of the reasons why I thought these are important to be talked about. So our academies actually encourage consumption enormously because we select those who consume best and we graduate them with the topmost accolades. And we also encourage only those people who follow the syllabus very rigidly, and we promote them as well. And in science education particularly, the practical exams in science are conducted to test if the given protocols are followed strictly or not. And you can imagine the way how these things are actually designed, the way how our assessments are designed, you can see very clearly how that we are, in a sense, making sure that the students and teachers do not turn their head to left and right, but continue to a single goal of delivering lessons, completing syllabus, and even when it comes to experimental training that we need to give in the science education, we focus a lot on just following strictly the protocols that are handed over to them. And these are, of course, very well known to us in science education. We have been doing research about it, we're trying to find some remedies as well. But then there are some very systemic issues that we need to address. So it's a very good idea for us, since we're reflecting today, to think about how we're actually not letting innovation enter into a system in a very systematic way. And of course, many of these things are also known to many of you. I won't spend much time here, but only one important point I would like to mention here is that in the entire process, there is enormous amount of ignoring of the production practices, production of and co-creation of knowledge practices as a context for education and evaluation. So this has been one of the major problems that we have, and these are already very well perceived issues in higher education. A lot of people have talked about them, and we can go to those details if necessary in a later course of discussion. So is there a way out? Of course, that is one of the most important things, because criticism is very easy to do, and we need to also think in terms of what kind of ways and means by which we can take it forward. So how do we reach a sustainable excellence in any given area? And so I would like to take a very, very simple, simple-minded example. But this example that I'm taking is an example of cricket. I know very well that cricket is nothing to do with science education. But still, I think that there is some important lesson that we can learn from here. For one important reason, that India is always on the top of the world when it comes to cricket. So how did we achieve that is an important thing to reflect on, because we were not always on the top of the world. We have reached there, and there is an important lesson, I think, to gather from here. So the most important aspect, of course, is that, we all play games together. And when it comes to academic games, we try to play isolated games. So I would be making this kind of contrasting thing while I speak about the cricket, so that you understand the analogy clearly. And so, in fact, our assessments never have any provision for collaboratively working with other people. We don't positively assess collaboration and teamwork. And in fact, we discourage them through and through. So our academic structures are not made to encourage these things. And in fact, when we are talking about skills, I'll be coming to that a little later, and I'm sure the other esteemed panelists will also have more to say about the skills, more than I do today. But it's very important that collaboration comes first. When it comes to how to collaborate with people, how to do teamwork is a very important aspect of any game that we play, whether it's academic game or otherwise. And as you can see, that there is enormous sense of involvement. There is an effective cognitive aspect when it comes to playing a game. But that also happens to all of us scientists. When we work as scientists in labs, we always get involved. We get emotional when we don't get results proper. And we get very emotional when some of our assistants and other colleagues actually perform some mistakes while they work in the lab. Because as you can see, these mistakes people do also have immediate effective feedback. And this happens only because of that effective embodied understanding of what we do in our labs. And as you can see, in the case of games, when we play in the streets, we have a lot of spectators. The people who play these games do not have to be Sachin Tendulkars. Even a small kid, our own brother, our own sister, or our children, when they play, we are very happy to watch them. And that is because that is the kind of enjoyment that we get when there is access to the playground. And all of us are there in the playground. And that is very important. That is why we need spectators for science education as well, or even for the laboratories, if you think about it. And secondly, the people who are part of the game, as well as the spectators, everyone knows the rules of the game. And all of us know that the spectators who are watching the cricket telecast at home or otherwise, everyone, without any gender differences in this country, knows the rules of the game. They all appreciate when something goes wrong, and they also judge even the umpire's decisions as well. And that is the kind of level of depth in which this knowledge of these rules of the game actually being processed. When it comes to science, we unfortunately haven't informed the rules of the game to the entire community. Though our constitution does talk about scientific temper being the responsibility of every citizen. It's a right of the citizen to participate in science. Unfortunately, very few people in this country, less than 1%, actually understand the rules of the game. And here is an important challenge for us. And as you can see here, another important thing that happens, and we can learn from cricket. Cricket, when somebody wants to play cricket, they don't look for a sophisticated lab. Whatever lab they have, whatever means they have, they innovatively make use of that space and start playing that game. And in fact, as you can see, the innovations come from everywhere, from every quarter. And even the things that do not look like wickets will be made to behave like wickets. And since you play the games on the street, everybody is welcome. There are no gender discrimination, and all the people actually participate in this kind of game. And that's why everybody knows the rules of the game as well. You should have at least played the game at least once in order to understand and participate and become at least a spectator, if not a player. And as you can see, there is enormous amount of frugality. This is really not a bat, it's just some patch of wood, and that becomes a bat for this small child. And as you can see here, for a rubber ball, there is absolutely no need for wearing any guard, but then this guy actually uses paper carton for their things. This is basically to illustrate how innovative children are. And when they get into schools, how we kill that innovation and creativity as soon as they get into the schools, because we play very different rules inside the academic environment. And there is no end of creativity, as you can see. Anything that looks like a wicket, and even those which do not look like a wicket, as in this case, the slippers, will be made into the wickets. And this is how the cricket is played in this country. So as we look and took cricket to the streets and became world class, and what I'm arguing actually is that the reason why we are world class is only because we have actually taken cricket to the streets, and we haven't taken science to the streets, and that's one of the important reasons why the science education is of the kind of quality that we have today. Of course, a very important thing that we need to know is that in a kind of a pyramid kind of representation, when you have people, all the people may not understand the game. There will be only some small subgroup of them, but most of them are spectators, and very few of them are players, and out of which very few of them actually end up being referees or coaches. And this is normally the case with almost every practice, whether it is science, engineering, technology, mathematics, or even games. But one important thing that we have achieved when it comes to academies is that there are absence of spectators. Most of the people in the country do not know what we do inside our higher education institutes. So there is some kind of a detachment, there is some kind of an alienation of what we do inside our academies, and that is not being informed at a large scale. And so there is this kind of detachment, and this I consider is a very important problem, both in society and in terms of, this is also a kind of a cognitive gap, but from a social perspective. And so I just want to quickly summarize what are the lessons that we learn from cricket. Is, of course, the most important thing is that we know that people in India are very, very creative and innovative. And they practice in a very collaborative space in every street corner. And spectators' feedback is a great motivator for what we do. And in fact, that is the most important feedback that we get, rather than just having some kind of financial sustainability that we talk about. And most also important are the sharing the rules of the game. And also the last point is very important, and making the entry level very, very inclusive. So the question, of course, also always arises when it comes to inclusiveness. So how do you make this process very inclusive? So one of the important things that I learned from working with various technologies that are related to disabilities is that the most important principle to keep in mind is that technologies that work for the differently abled work for everyone universally. On the other hand, the media and the technologies that are made for the abled people like us ironically introduces disabilities. And so innovation for inclusion is a very important thing, and therefore in this case, the most important principle that we need to remember is that the universal literacy is possible only when we learn to speak to a hearing impaired through sign language. And something like this, I think, should become a necessity, that in every school we have to tell people to participate and learn the sign language, because it's such a universal language. If you take a person who is signing in India and put him in China or Japan or in some other country, they would be able to talk much better than any of us who do not know that language. Because even if there are multiple sign languages in the world, a lot of that sign language is very much embodied, and they are able to make much faster transfer into other cultures, as we know. And similarly, if we make our books speak to make differently abled people, particularly the blind people, and those speaking books are good for all of us, and anyone can make use of them. And similarly, at our lab, for example, we developed a script that doesn't judge people with dyslexia. And I will not take you there, but just wanted to give you an idea of this particular script that we developed, which eliminates dyslexia. And of course, a lot of empirical studies are still to be done on this, but I just wanted to tell you that this kind of inclusive problems are also to be, inclusive issues also are to be expressed for one important reason, that we haven't made our scripts even universally accessible. And that includes both the Indian scripts as well as the other scripts across the world. And of course, one important thing you must realize is that English fares worst in that, because this is the only language for which the spelling Olympiads are held in the world, which actually gives you an idea about why such Olympiads are actually held for spelling, when spelling is supposed to be the easiest thing, because you really want to make universal literacy possible, then spelling should never have to be learned. Of course, now this is, I will consider as one important indicator of spectators, because a lot of people have completely ignored this issue, and that is why I want to highlight this point. So it arises from the feeling of being a practitioner and a player, because identity formation is very important when a student joins our course, and how that is to say, when someone is taking a science course from us, do they actually become scientists? Do they at least feel that, okay, now I have become a scientist? That kind of an identity is very important, and that is possible only when we have a community of practice as a learning environment. That is, we need to actually make our laboratory spaces where we actually practice our science and technology and engineering practices should be exposed to the outer world. We have to make our academies porous, and we should not be building walls and alienate ourselves from the communities. And this is, of course, a very widely researched area in both education and science education. And we learned quite a lot that community of practices for every discipline are very, very vital. And now, may I just ask?
Could you wind up?
Yeah, that's exactly the reason why I just halted here. Just very quickly, I would just wind up the part that I wanted to say. So, keeping all this in mind, of course, that we did an experiment, and we call it as collaboratively understanding biology education. So we work with students from across the country. As you can see, we have a large number of people from across the country, and we form clubs of students. And these are all happening sometimes inside the college and school, sometimes outside. And during the pandemic, all these labs have actually become part of their home. And our home labs basically look like this. So the children during the pandemic actually started creating labs on their reading table. So the reading table has become an experimental space for them. And this is how we have encouraged a large number of students and people, because we want, just like cricket, the science should be played on the streets and in every house. In fact, many of the students actually use their kitchen as a place for innovation. And one most important things, apart from creating co-creation spaces, the other important point that we also emphasize enormously is conversation. Written conversations through social networking space that we encourage a lot of people to do that. I don't want to get into these details, but as you can see, Homi Bhabha Center has enormous amount of resources, starting from primary school to school level to even entry-level college level. We actually had the vision to actually introduce topics of this kind, such as climate change and health matters and ecological balance, etc. And we designed textbooks even before the SDG goals are announced on these topics. And all of them require all of your close scrutiny and attention for enhancing and expanding the challenges that we are facing today. I don't want to get into more details, but only thing that I wanted to say here is that the last point that I wanted to emphasize is on the issue of STEM habits. You can also read them as academic habits, or you may want to also read them as skills. Because, see, we have been emphasizing enormously on conceptual and content knowledge of science. I think the time has come for us to keep the content in the background and bring STEM habits to the foreground. And these STEM habits are available at metastudio.org, a website that Homi Bhabha Center has developed to promote and recognize the STEM habits while students and teachers and mentors participate in a culture. So these STEM habits or STEM skills are actually divided into various kinds of mathematical, communication skills, engineering skills, thinking and reasoning skills, design thinking, and data and observation skills. So it's a very interdisciplinary way of talking about it. So I'm really looking forward to a day where our academies will talk about these things as the curriculum and keep the content in the background, making sure that these become the objective of our both school as well as higher education. So I'll stop here, and I will come back when there are more questions and discussions towards later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nagarjun. That was very, very interesting. Technologies that work for the disabled, work for all. And I have seen this happening myself. I have been promoting this in the NCERT also and at other places. And the second point, of course, is what we have been trying to, second point that I'm stressing, which is we just said at the end, which the National Curriculum Framework has been stressing since 2005, which is that the content should only be a vehicle to develop the kind of academic habits, or as he says, skills, that he was trying to talk about, to develop the ability to create, to think, to question, and take further. So thank you, Nagarjun, for that. And we will be coming back to further discussions later. But just now, I would like to introduce the second panelist, Dr. Devapriya Datta, who is currently the head and scientist G at the DST. And he is in the Science for Equity, Empowerment and Development, SEED, State Science and Technology Program, and National Resource Data Management System divisions of the DST. His interests lie, and for a long time he's been working in the area of geoinformatics for natural resource management, particularly with a focus on land and water. He is today, for example, what I would like to focus on his background for capacity building for local level planning and international S&T cooperation in the context of the SDGs, that Sustainable Development Goals that Nagarjun mentioned at the beginning of his presentation. So Dr. Datta will be discussing with us about how capacity building through education and technology can help harness innovations. Over to you, Dr. Datta.
Good afternoon, Professor Sinclair, and I thank the organizer, especially Professor Banerjee, to be giving me this opportunity on these, the occasion of National Science Day. The theme of this year, as you all know, the future of science, technology, and innovation impacts on education, skills, and work. And in that context, I think what Professor Sinclair in your mail requested, that to give a focus on the people with the special ability, I will come to that aspects mostly, because that's the that was the the request from you. But starting from that, I think already Professor Dr. Nagarjuna has created the podium that what we are talking about, that the evolutions of our total society from an agri-oriented society to a knowledge society, and where the underpinning of that is the education. Now, as this progress has taken place, innovation has always become the fundamental to the academic, to all of this development. Let us forget about the academic disciplines on education, because I think Dr. Nagarjuna gave a very good examples in the context of cricket, because the interest in that and has brought innovations in that field. And at the core of that remains definitely the human imaginations and the creativity, and the role of all of these things, what you are seeing here, to how to ignite, how to harness that the creativity for a purpose of the human development. And obviously, like in the case, if you give a boundary of that to science and technology, because I always believe, these innovations and the creativity, you shouldn't put any boundary, because we always think about in the science and technology, people will do the STEM, and or the creative arts will do the creative art. But I think it is the same brain, and the creativity and the innovation in our country, though we look at it as a more of a compartment, but it shouldn't be. So I think the science is the core of the inquisitiveness, to know about the curiosity about your nature and everything. And obviously, the art should look at it as the complementary to that. And the innovations, though we have many definitions of the innovations, but recently I found a very good, definitions of an innovation. Innovation is any type of interventions for any system of your interest, where you bring an efficiency value of more than one. That means where your the output is more than one than input. That's only the innovation, and it can be fitted into any context of any system or subsystems. As Dr. Nagarjuna was saying about that, currently any type of the human interventions has to be oriented towards the human development, the societal development, and from 2015 onwards, the globally accepted that boundary is in sustainable development and SDG sustainable development goal, where the the bottom of that is obviously the education, any knowledge, where science and technology, probably being from the Ministry of Science and Technology, I segregated it, but I don't believe in that, because the knowledge is seamless, and the innovation should be looked at in the context of that to develop a knowledge society, and currently what we are discussing about the sustainable development. We have many constraints because of this formal the system of knowledge acquisition, knowledge applications, and knowledge creations. I think again I go to Dr. Nagarjuna's the examples where the open creativity what a child's show on the street gets probably the curtail when we bring that child into a classroom environment. We have to introspect, and really, and this introspections is not a new thing. It's going on all over the time. Professor Sinclair is involved in that. We have to bring it into practice. So, in our current teaching report, that the public report of the basic education talked about, it's mercilessly stultifying. Let not I use those all criticizing thing, but if you see that there is I was looking into from the context of the societal point of view, you see rural students reach experiences of the the surrounding, but they have lacked systematizations in the clear experience. Urban students, like our children, more of a bookish learning. Probably they feel that the milk come from the mother dairy booth, and because that is of their ignorance of the natural the surrounding. The small science approach that what has evolved is talking about the world around you, observing, recording, analyzing, expressing, discussing, arguing, writing, communications with the peers. This, the tools for learning, thinking, systematic observations, quantitative thinking, language skills, and these things. But in this context, let me tell my own experience as a parent of class 11. My daughter is in class 11. When it comes to the schools, somehow there is a disjoint between the practice of education and the research in education. The research in education, which has cognitive studies, sociocultural studies, and the body of knowledge is here. When it comes to the practice, there is non-alignment. So this alignment should bring about, and we must define our way of the innovations. We must define about that what kind of innovations we must bring in the educations, and what is needed for our societal requirement. Dr. Nagarjuna is right. Our entire focus has remained about the consumers, or mostly the supply side. We haven't looked into that our requirement and what do we demand. And this is in context of any of the sectors in the country. Now, if we look into the policy framework, and from here I want to enter into that especially enabled or the disadvantaged group of the society. We have the RPDWD.
Excuse me, Dr. Datta, sorry to intervene, but do you want the slides to move on, or does that come later?
Actually, madam, I am moving it. The problem is bandwidth, so probably like that's the reason you cannot see. So because I am moving the slides, but because of the bandwidth. So what I will do, I will.
Okay, now the fifth slide has come up after the first one.
Yeah, so it's a bandwidth thing. What I will do, I will put my video off. That will give a little bit of the bandwidth. So I will come back.
Sure, whatever.
Yeah. Just So, madam, what this? Can you see the policy framework, madam?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, we can.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So if we look at the policy framework, as we are discussing, Professor Sindra was discussing, that we have an, the RPWD, like, which is talking about that the inclusions around the disability, which brings in, for the special schools, for the, the specially able and the neighborhood schools. And then the right to educations, which talks about the home-based educations and the neighborhood, the school. So this is the existing framework. And the national education policy to 2020 talks about the equitable and the inclusive. So it's basically, it talks about all of these things, so that it basically it removes the RPWD and then it brings all the students together. Now, this is a policy prescription. But if you see the reality, 45% of the Indians with special needs are still illiterate. And if you see in the graduates and the above, they are only 4.4% of the total, the populations. So this, justifies that we have miles to go. If we look into the science and technology innovation policy, currently, though it is saying 2020, it is a draft space. It talks about, if you see our earlier science and technology policy, the focus on the scientific temper, then it, it evolved into the more and more towards the socio-economic development or science for the citizenship science. But this is the first time that the equity and inclusions has been integrated into the science and technology and innovation policy, and it is, it is spread over all the aspects of the science technology innovation. If I look into the department, science and technology's capacity building landscape for the equity and the inclusions, we have, we have SERB, basically what we have a EMEQ scheme for the CST, SCST, the community. We have Kiran divisions, which focus on the fellowship schemes for the gender parity for the the women scientists. Inspire gives for motivating students of areas for the SCST, and the SID division, which I look after, focus on the equity and empowerment of the most vulnerable sections to the SMT interventions, and one of them is the the PWDs. These are the other capacity building, the landscape of the government of India, starting from the National Skill Development Corporation, vocational training offered by many of the National Institute of Department of Empowerment, Ministry of Labor Employment having many of the vocational rehabilitation centers for the handicapped, and technical vocational courses being offered through community colleges, IITs, NGOs focus on vocational training, skill development, private sector training organizations, the National Rural Livelihood Missions. It has aspects of that. So they now coming to the proposed solutions, basically how the education and the technology can be brought together for the capacity building of the specially able group into these mainstreams. We have to look at it not from the specially able group, but in general, the building capacity for the innovations in education needs empowering. Already we have discussed. We need enabling educators, the integrating the technology, skill building, and the higher order, because they are basically the the capacity builders, and they establish a learning environment for the future of people. We must create an immersive environment where people learn from their experience of the reality rather than more and more theoretical or the bookish distance. And in this context, there are the many innovative pedagogy, like starting from blended learning, the experimental learning, computational thinking, gamifications are involved, but we need to bring it into our mainstream activities. So these are the different skills for the innovations that already, since Dr. Nagarjuna has discussed, I'm not going into details of it. Now coming into especially the persons with the special ability, there is a big gap. Persons with disabilities are the poorest in the current populations. There is a training being offered through various institutions is non-homogeneous. There is not quality, very low access to the present training infrastructure to this in rural area. And the private sector, low level of involvement, skill training offered by various ministries of PWD is fragmented. So there is requirement for a quality vocational training, homogeneous curriculum or standardized curriculum, use of latest technology, synergistic participation of the private and NGOs in training and placement, and targeted optimal use of the CSR funds. This is an example of one of the NGOs, Enable India, that how they basically they enable the students from this group and make them into mainstream. And these are the different areas, like as you see that they have been able to put the people so that after developing their capacity. There's a very good success story and a model available with us. But if you overall see in this overall like in the world situation, so Indian disability talks about 2.2% of the total global disability, 15%. But this has been expanded after WHO has included many of the different disability here. So around there are 26.8 million Divyangjans in India, so which is 2.2% of the total population. And capacity building through the technology in out of our experience should be promoted through a multidisciplinary research, should strengthen the research on habilitations and the rehabilitation technologies. There is a Rehabilitation Council of India, which regulates and monitors services and syllabi, central rehabilitations about all these qualifications. But what Department of Science and Technology has produced is contributed here is in developing the assistive technology through a program we call TIDE, or Technology Interventions for Disabled and the Elderly, which cut across all the component of the Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. As you know, like the Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan has the three main the pillars: the accessibility, then the usage of the ICTs, and the education. So this the technologies, some of the technologies what has been developed through this support is a refreshable braille display. Obviously, this is for the visually the challenged people. So that the laptop is for the it is equivalent to the laptop for the visually challenged. Speech input, speech output communications aid, or SISOCA, which is an alternative to augmented speech communication targeted for the speech-impaired cerebral palsy, and visualization framework for the BISPEL, which provide the visualization framework to the hearing impaired children. Similarly, interactive teaching aid for the autistic children, or ITAC, intelligent tutoring system for the learning disabled, and the mobile phone assisted remote therapy. All of these things are at the prototype stage. We're trying to use and it's for in field testing to a larger cohort. And please, any one of you want to take it forward in the field level, you please contact us. We want to take it for the field testing and really can find it out to productizations from the prototyping stage. So through this, as Dr. Nagaraja was saying, we are trying to address these 5 SDGs, basically, definitely the quality educations, the good jobs, economic growth, reducing inequalities, SDG 10, and SDG 11 for the accessibility issues, and definitely through the collaborations of the goals. So the framework with which, or these recommendations with which I will end, is that the incorporations of the rehabilitation science and disability in the mainstream curricula, knowledge-based rehabilitation science and disability study. We should have in many integrative models of internship and practicals, and like it is across the population. We should identify and incorporate research problems which out of an immersive experience. It's not from the disabled people itself. In the developing affordable state-of-the-art technology for the rehabilitation, use of modern tools, like some of them I have shown, digital empowerment, research evidence-based data collections, building an enabling environment, and policies on inclusions, which are already NEP and the STIP policy is talking about, and more advocacy. So thank you very much. And though I have one meeting, but I will be available at the end for any types of the questions and to take part in your discussions. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Datta. And apart from the other points you made, it was very interesting to know about the devices that are under creation and finalization, the special devices for the differently abled of the different groups. And we would certainly like to be in touch with you for those devices. The PowerPoint presentation didn't work very well in the sense of the the moving slides. The slides.
Yeah, that's a bandwidth issue, madam.
We have the presentation and we can share it with the other members, which will at least give them a hook for the ideas you shared with us. So thank you very much again. And now we move to our third panelist, Professor Nagawat, a renowned physicist from the University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. Theoretical physics is his area. And he's an advocate of transhumanism. His major area of interest, one of the major areas, is convergence. And of course, he has spent years on where he gave the prototype paper for developing the Center for Converging Technologies and several related centers, ideas, institutions that he thought would be extremely useful in this context. Now, he will be presenting to us how science education can be helpful to meet the skill demand of the country. Of course, he is, as at the beginning we were told, he is currently the director of the Skill University in Rajasthan. So thank you, Dr. Nagawat, for being with us. Please go ahead.
Please unmute yourself, sir.
Sir, please unmute.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes, you are. Yes, sir, you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you very much for nice word of introduction, and I am thankful to organizers for providing me the opportunity to share my views here in this forum and panel discussion. I am a teacher, and therefore I will give you a theoretician and a teacher's perspective, and especially in light of what I subscribes to, the convergence of sciences and technologies, and what should be done in science education on how it should be reformed for promoting innovation so that we can also be a leader of the change. We all are aware of the great contributions which Indian ancient scientists have played in the development of science, and this is a time to pay tribute to them and do something so that we can change and we can make again India a leader in science and science education. So as Carl Sagan has said, science is a way of thinking more than a body of knowledge. But most of the time when students, and even my students who have attended various courses, they follow it as a body of knowledge, and therefore when you have a body of knowledge, you can do the rote learning and you can memorize the things and facts, and that's how the disciplines in sciences have been taught in Indian schools and universities. And so I wish to address in my talk to that particular aspect. And at the same time, I wish to point out that in this discussion, I will be using word science in a much broader sense and incorporating, and my previous speakers have also done that all branches and disciplines of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And nowadays, after globalization, and especially in this 21st century, the boundaries between these branches are also disappearing, and the sciences and technologies are merging and converging into each other. And at the same time, therefore, we believe that science is not for few. Now, in modern time, the science is for everyone, and it should be made, and science education should be made accessible to everyone, and everyone should develop the culture and inculcate the culture which scientists have and should follow, because it's a way of thinking. And this thinking is much better way of thinking than the other modes of thinking which we have in other schools of thought in humanities or social sciences or philosophies. So in my talks, I have been advocating that now we are moving to a different time, from the dominance of Homo sapiens like us to a time where the machines and non-biological intelligence may become dominant in coming year of time. So we have to prepare for that, and we have to do something. So as we know, and then that I am including this slide just for making my case as a theoretician, that as we know that science is a systematic study of nature, but in the set of nature, we include only those objects which are accessible in experiment. And if something is not accessible in experiment, it is not the concern of the scientific exploration or study. Therefore, but every branch of knowledge, even humanities and philosophies, require a theoretical framework. And theorizing is very, very essential. And when you make a theory, and then you can test it and verify or discard a theory. And often, as we all understand, that in science we can discard a theory, it is not possible to establish. And therefore, science is developing since long about in this manner. And theoretical frameworks have been proposed, and new theories keep on coming, and we have to educate, and the scientists have to learn the new methods, new techniques, and new tools. It has been happening, and it is the way the science has progressed since the 17th century, you can say. And in all those things, we have a language of our own, and the semantics is of this language. The language of the physical theory is very, very crucial thing, and which creates a lot of problem also. And most of the time, the student cannot grasp the concepts and approaches of the science very well because of the semantic failure. And the semantic failure occurs because of maybe the lack of interest in science of the science teacher, or the manner in which the science education is delivered. So I wish to focus on the theory and give you one example and try to explain my point, what I wish to say. And this is, as you all know, that in a classical theoretical science, you don't study the natural system, but natural system is encoded into a formal system, and the theoretical study involves manipulation or mathematical manipulation or analysis on the formal system and predicting something. And that can be then decoding, and one can perform an experiment. So the left-hand side in this slide represents experiments, and the right-hand side represents the theory, and the two have related to each other. And so I will now choose a very simple example, and that's the example of free fall of an apple. The layman and everybody thinks that he understands the gravitation and the free fall of an apple. Because long back, Newton gave a theory which we know as a Newtonian mechanics, and which has a lot of concepts and definitely a mathematical structure to analyze and solve problems in Newtonian mechanics. So in Newtonian mechanics, the apple, which is encoded into a particle. Apple has a size, particle is of no size practically, or infinitesimal size. But we have to make the apple to a particle which is located in the space. And then we can study the implication of gravitational force and write down the equation given by the Newton, so the law of motions, and then we can derive the expression for example, for time of flight, how much time it will take in falling down to the earth. And then we can perform experiment and check in the experiment whether the experiment is in agreement with the theoretical prediction or not. When you do this experiment, you get the agreement with the theoretical prediction, because the accuracy of the experiment is limited. And that conveys you that, okay, the Newtonian explanation of free fall is quite good, and it is in agreement with the experimental observation. And so we start doing something after teaching this program. Most of the students, when learn this particular thing in a school or curriculum, then what they start believing in it, that the fall of an apple is due to gravitational pull exerted by the earth on the apple. And they do not realize, and that is more important, and that's the basis of my talk, and that they don't realize that the science is not creation of a faith. Science doesn't believe in truth. Science believes in tentative truth. This was a tentative truth long years back when Newton gave these explanations. We were happy with it because we were finding or observing that this is in agreement with experiment, and that is the test. And so we had a view that theory and experimental science have close relationship, and if you make a prediction in theory, it should be tested in experiments and it should agree. And agreement is good and making a happy situations. But later on, as you know, even 100 years, more than 100 years back, we realized that this explanation and this theory of gravitation given by Einstein is wrong. But what is happening that when we are teaching the free fall of an apple and such problems in school curriculum in our Indian schools, then we are not pointing out to the student that the explanation given by the Newton is ultimately or in later time has been proven to be wrong because of the experimental observation. So that killed the curiosity, and most of the students which I have come across, and even laymen, they firmly believe it as a faith or firm belief that the fall of an apple is due to gravitational force exerted by the earth on the apple. That's definitely a Newtonian explanation, and that definitely agrees with experiment to some extent. But later when we discovered, and in fact the Einstein gave the new theory of gravitation, which we all know as general theory of relativity. And this new theory has the same terms, maybe space and time, but a very different conceptualization of space and time. What is happening that in our Indian schools and Indian universities, we are failing in communicating that when you move from one theoretical framework to the second theoretical framework, the meanings or semantics keeps on changing. So what is the meaning of time in Newtonian mechanics is not the same in the Einstein special theory of relativity or in the general theory of relativity. And the space and time, which is very passive in the earlier theories, becomes quite active. And then we realize that if you understand general theory of relativity, then you realize that the fall of an apple is not due to gravitational force in this model or in this theoretical explanation, and it is due to the curvature of space-time. Definitely, the understanding the curvature of space-time requires a very deeper knowledge of mathematics, and a more complicated mathematics is required to understand by the student for understanding the GTR and explanation of free fall of an apple given by GTR. But this is also, as we all know, that in this manner the science moves, and this is the culture of the science. This is how the ideas and thoughts progress in science, that we accept the Newtonian explanation, then we reject it, and we accept the GTR explanation also for time being. But we know that with the discovery of the electron in 1997, most of our concepts in physics especially were shaken, and we had to build up new ideas, new concepts were introduced, and we all know that a new branch of physics appeared, and that's called the quantum mechanics. And the quantum mechanics concepts are much different than the classical mechanics concepts, because in quantum mechanics you have probabilistic determinism, whereas the classical mechanics is fully deterministic. In quantum mechanics, you cannot specify the complete state of the system, but in classical mechanics, you can. And we know that this example I have taken to give you and emphasize here that planning for the science education, and if we want that our science students have better skills and they have capacity to better innovation, when we teach the free fall of an apple, we have to include in our teaching and in our program all those things which are leading to from the Newtonian time to the current time, because they have to progress the science in the current period of time. And so the current understanding, as you know, that the understanding given by the general theory of relativity is also not right, because it is not a quantum theory, and the all other fundamental interactions are explained in terms of quantum theory. And we are still in search of the quantum theory of gravitation. Definitely, I'm very happy that the quantum theory of gravitation given by Abhay Astekar, one of the Indian scientists, developed quantum gravity. Maybe it may be in long run of time, maybe we find evidence in support of it. So the picture shown here is a black hole, and as you know that the black hole cannot exist in Newtonian universe. So the science teaching should be, in my understanding, more honest and should be in tune with the philosophy of the science. It's not a body of knowledge, it's the process of doing science, and the skills related to the process of doing science are therefore very, very important and should be communicated. But what happened that when we make video lectures or when we deliver lectures in class, we just want to meet out the requirement of the curriculum as per the evaluation purpose and as communicated by the masters of the education. But that's not the correct approach of teaching science, and therefore a lot of reform is required, that every science teaching, every component, even a sub-component which you teach, should explain how the science and process of doing science is involved in that. And if we can do that, then only we can develop that capacity in the student that he is capable of bringing in change through his skills acquired, and he will be better able to appreciate the skill set, and in later on time, definitely, therefore, he will be better able to contribute through innovation. There is no doubt that the innovation is driving the change in the world. So first realization up to this point is that science is a tentative body of knowledge, and unless this is realized by all the students learning science, it has no meaning. And now I wish to come to an experimental aspects also, and therefore many students acquire this misconception that the experiment tells us about the truth. But as we all know that experiments and earlier experiments are mostly based on our sensory perception and the kind of the capacity which we have as a biological species. But later on, we could develop the scientific techniques and tools and improve the precision of the experiment. And anything which you observe, observation or empirical observation is not science. Anything which you observe has a certain limitations, and at the every time, even if it is an agreement. So for example, the free fall is an agreement with the Newtonian theory. You have to look for the better options, and that's the doing the experiments. Any experiment which you perform in any science lab in a school or university program is a beginning, and it's not an end. And the greater goal for the scientist or the student who wish to become a scientist or even contribute to innovation in science has to realize that the experimental limitations are there, and we have a lot of role to play. Now, what is happening that nowadays we need a very sophisticated instrumentation in making scientific and studies and carrying out the science research. And there are complex equipments and instruments required, and there are safety procedures involved. And therefore, when you involve people with disability also, then you have to take care of. And however, that is not a problem, because now we have technologies and tools by which we can ensure. But we should think as a planner about how do we produce the students who are prepared in STEM with the habit of mind vital, which means here that with the habit of pursuing the science in the way the science has been pursued by the great scientists of all time. So that should be done. And I give you an example, another example from experimental science, that you don't stop, and there are no boundaries and limitations in science. So when the X-ray diffraction, which is definitely a topic generally you teach in physics courses, but X-ray diffraction studies lead to the structure of the building block of life, DNA. And so with the understanding of the DNA which we could acquire through the scientific instrumentation, our approach about biology has changed, and now we talk about molecular biology. Now we have genomic databases, and now we understand that involving also the information and communication technology, that the data which a genome has is just like a very big data which we have otherwise in other disciplines, and therefore can also be manipulated. And with the capacity to do manipulation and make new kinds of materials like graphene or the materials which have interesting property at nanoscales. Similarly, we know that the same nanotechnology, when applied to the biological genes, the biological materials like DNA, so the gene editing can be done. And that's why the great physicist Freeman Dyson, who is no more, but he has said that in the future, a new generation of artists will be writing genomes as fluently as black and white wrote verses. And that is what we wish to cover, that we have reached to a time where we have to make a migration from what I call the Homo sapiens to Homo evolutus. Homo evolutus is the first biological species, so-called, and so proposed, that which will be able to modify its own gene and which will be able to accelerate its own evolution in due course of time. Though I understand that that's a very bigger goal, and only time will reflect whether we can achieve it or not. But I am as a transhumanist, I am the supporter of this idea that we are on a stage. So science and innovation or development or anything scientific skills will help us in reaching and in transforming ourselves from Homo sapiens to Homo evolutus. And similarly, now we have much better understanding of the human brain also. And that is also helping us in developing new kinds of solutions and new kinds of algorithms. And with these technologies, we can understand it. And with the development in computational science, the story of the science, which used to be a relationship between experiment and theory, has now become a triangular love story, between theory, experiment, and computational science, and the three are interconnected with each other. So unless we teach simulation and modeling, and if we have these advanced techniques which are available in computational methods which are available, should be integrated in school and programs which even IGNOU is delivering the science education. And the advantage of the computational science is that you can explore a larger parameter space which cannot be otherwise explored in performing experiments. So experimental capacity in a way is a capacity to explore and understand the behavior of the nature in only a limited manner. But if we use these techniques of computational science, not only we can explore a greater parameter space, we can make prediction. Unfortunately, now we have a capacity to analyze the very, very big data. Now we have the algorithms, and now we have the techniques and capacities of virtual reality, augmented reality, and the national education policy is therefore rightly emphasized that the applications of AI in all disciplines of science and in all disciplines of life even, and machine learning, and how through machine learning we can discover something new. And that's it. But beyond that also, which national education policy not talk about, but DST is coming up with a big program. And that is because this century, 21st century, will be known as the century of quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics birth occurred in 20th century, but 21st century, all the disciplines, all the branches of science and technologies will be learned in terms of quantum mechanical methods, and quantum contributions or quantum effects will be very, very important. So we have to move from the current type of computing, which is called classical computing, to the quantum computing. But at the same time, students should be made aware by the teacher that the modeling and simulation should not be viewed as a real world experimentation. And the significance of the experimental world experimentation is not reduced by introducing the computers. So if you analyze all the events which have happened since Tim Berners-Lee's invention of World Wide Web, like the what we call ICT revolution, and which has led to what we call globalization, and the world has become a global village, and the phenomena which I have never studied, but now we know that the emerging economies and emergence of the BRICS, and now the technology which is accessible to everyone, and it can be accessed from anywhere, anytime, and any device, and the entire world has become flat world, and the interactions between human being and machine, or human being and computer, is increasing day by day. So I put it in this manner that all these changes have been driven by this, because any change which has been brought in by the science and technology in the society, initially the change is opposed because of the nature of the society or any physical system, also called inertia. But finally a new equilibrium gets established, and in this new equilibrium, the acceptance is there. But the beauty of the new equilibrium is the convergence, that the boundaries disappears, like what we call the globalization, that the boundaries between the nations, between the geographies have disappeared. Even now this talk can be attended by any person in Africa or Australia, and can get benefit out of it. So we are living in that world. But more important than that is that what governs the changes which are happening in the society or the social dynamics are also a very, very important aspect for the scientists too. And there are many ideas, but I support with the idea of what is called technological determinism, that in current time the technological determinism is at work, and which means the direction of the change and what kind of changes will happen in our life and in our societies is being decided by the technological determinism, by the technology, and not by the social leaders and by the policies and policy makers, but it is through this. This has given to a scenario which has been pointed out long back in 1959 by R.P. Feynman, by saying that there is a plenty of room at bottom, and by that he means that a time will come when we will have this capacity to do manipulations of atoms at the nano scale, and atom by atom we will be able to manufacture new kinds of molecules, and that would allow a revolutionary thing. And that revolutionary thing is because most of the gadgets and appliances that you make are made of devices, and devices have their characteristics which on the basis of which these appliances functions, and the devices are made of materials, and the specific properties of the materials allow them to function in that particular manner. So this is the paradigm of engineering. If you discover new material, maybe new kinds of characteristics these materials may have, and new kind of devices can be made, and new kind of technology can be developed. This has been happening, and this is what I call a common engineering paradigm. But the RP Feynman could point out that in future we would be able to reverse the engineering paradigm, and maybe if we have a particular application in mind, we can search for what kind of devices would be required to solve that particular problem, and then we can search for the materials, and maybe then we will be able to design those materials in the laboratory. And that's called the nanotechnology. And the effect of introduction of the nanotechnology and to the other three rapidly developing because of the advances in the nanotechnology, the other three technology which are very important today: biotechnology, bioinformatics, biomedicines, and the information and communication technology, which primarily includes all artificial intelligence, machine learning, as well as quantum computing, and the study of the brain and cognitive and neurosciences. These technologies together are called NBIC technologies, and these NBIC technologies have led to a concept of the convergence of all sciences branches. And if you are an expert in biology, maybe then also you need to learn the mathematics and the advanced instrumentation and engineering aspects to pursue the research in biotechnology or bioinformatics. And similarly, now these biological materials can also be used as materials for engineering devices. And very soon we will find that many solutions and applicants and gadgets are available. So why I am citing this here? Because I wish to make a point that our education program, science education program, should be reformed so that we can communicate this convergence of sciences. And this convergence of sciences, the newly appearing technologies, have the capacity to solve all the socio-economic problems which we are facing today. And since we have paucity of time, I cannot speak on each of them. But I can give you an example of a membrane which was made by UCLA in 2006, which can convert any dirty water into the pure distilled water, and then the minerals can be added to it and can become the drinkable water. And so that's called UCLA membrane. And my student earlier at my University of Rajasthan has also developed a similar solution at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And we have now membranes which can convert dirty water into pure distilled water just by using the membrane, and the beauty is that nothing sticks to that membrane, so the dirt and other things can be very easily removed and it can be reused. And maybe one day, because as the technology functions and technology acceptance occurs, we would be able to use this technology to resolve or solve the problem of the scarcity of water. At the same time, this is the time where the students of science and as a community, we realize that the human beings have many shortcomings, and all these shortcomings can be addressed. And not only the socio-economic problems, the shortcomings of us as a biological species, because we have evolved from the cell and we have a long history of 3 or 4 billion years. But in this evolutionary process, which has happened or occurred naturally, since it could not be accelerated, now it is a time to redesign the human beings in such a manner to pay attention and to develop solutions and innovative methods to augment human beings with certain kinds of intelligence as well as certain things, so that these shortcomings can be overtaken. Since there is a limited time assigned to me, so I will not speak much on that, and will let you know about the development spiral, which I believe that in this manner, the science after its real beginning in 1500, however, at that time in the 16th century and 17th century, the subjects or disciplines of the science were natural history and natural philosophy, and Newton published all his papers in natural philosophy, and only later in 18th, 19th, 20th century, we have these new kinds of subject classification, physics, chemistry, biology, and so on. And now we are living in an information age, and we would be now from the information age is going to end very soon, and the kind of the development which is taking place in the technological front is very, very encouraging and is creating a scenario that the development is taking place at much rapid rate, and maybe the society will not be able to adjust itself or attain an equilibrium where they can cope up with the fast technological and scientific development. At the same time, for this particular period of time, training the students in science and giving them proper scientific skills and motivating them to pursue the innovation cannot be done in the same manner as people have done in the world earlier. So we are beginning and trying to enter into the era. So since the formation of RNA and DNA, we have come to the current time and where we have a digital presence. And the next thing is that we have to change ourselves. So the post-human, the term which has been coined, is different than the common human being which we observe at large as on today. But this is going to happen, that the integration of man and machine, or you can say the augmentation or integration of the intelligence and the non-biological intelligence, is something which is almost guaranteed to happen in coming period of time. And so these scientific skills which are required for pursuing the science and technologies in the current time are slightly different than those were in 16th, 17th and 18th century. However, the philosophy and the process of doing science and the attitude of science remains same. And scientific attitude, if we have, so the no change is required in that attitude, that we should have an openness and we should try to believe that anything which we know is tentative and we have to move ahead, and there is no permanent knowledge and there is nothing permanent in the entire universe. So what we can do now, so to conclude the discussions, a lot of things are required to be done. And so you can also play a lot and significant role in this. And that's the broad and deep curriculum be designed, and curriculum be redesigned, interrelationship be re-emphasized, the process of doing science is emphasized and things like that. And it should, the school activities and classroom activities in school and colleges should be such that they should be in tune with the philosophy of science, which the first speaker and expert in philosophy of science has already emphasized. And I wish that through the implementation of national education policy, hopefully we would be successful in changing the scenario of science education in such a manner that we will be having a very deep and rich curriculum, pointing out and encouraging the students. And I believe that in modern time, the requirement, not only in terms of job, most of the jobs are related to the STEM qualification or STEM skills, but not only in terms of the job, otherwise also maximum section of the society has to engage itself in the pursuit of science. The time is now different than it used to be. Earlier we could afford that the people can do and live in luxury with other disciplines of knowledge and can satisfy their curiosity and also the curiosity, but now it's not possible. But what is the major problem is that the attitude of teaching staff and lack of their advanced content knowledge is making a problem in delivery of the science education. And I hope that while implementing national education policy, but what is the positive is that the institutions like IGNOU can provide content, and which content can be looked by the teachers also, and which can make an assist for the improvement of the entire scenario in the school as well as in the colleges of the science teaching. So we need to encourage an inquiry-centric learning, and starting from any single phenomenon, the entire philosophy and process of science should be explained. Whatever you teach, that should be made, that how it has appeared and featured in the progresses of science, and what kind of road is and what is the road behind, road ahead in the same direction. That should be emphasized. So we have to because now a lot of plenty of resources are available, technologies is available. The previous speakers have talked about, I have not paid much attention on that, but so we can do it. We can foster the learning experiences using these technological solutions and the prospects which we have. And so the science literacy and the importance of the science literacy in non-STEM careers should also be emphasized. And that is what I have noticed in my entire lifetime. Now the science education was not delivered perfectly, but the students who have done Bachelor of Science degree or at least a school in science have also performed in other non-STEM careers also much better. So the society by and now, and since this is the right time, because after the COVID, the people have by and large realized the importance of science in their life. And if there were any doubts, maybe those doubts have been cleared or minimized. So we have to give a lifelong learning experiences for common people, for the students, for anyone who is interested in science, and for that a lot of effort is required. just making policies and making promises will not do. It requires ground level work, and it requires involvement of an entire. So just like as for the defense of a country, the army is important. Similarly, this teacher may be considered as an army which is required for progress of the science and ensuring the security and safety and so on. So since other speakers have already spoken about how the challenges which the disabled persons are in pursuit of science, I don't believe, because that there are very serious challenges. Most of the challenges can be grappled with, can be dealt with. We have solutions for it, and we have to be positive in accommodating all these persons with the disabilities in scientific pursuit and programs. And time has shown, and say, if not only the Stephen Hawking, but as you may be knowing, the Michael Faraday and the Maxwell and many others were having dyslexia. Even Galileo Galilei, who is considered as father of science, was having the problem. So having some kind of disability is not a hindrance in pursuit of science. And it may stop at the best in doing something in the scientific experiments, but the science can be pursued by all, and the solutions and technologies are available. But we should ensure and make a risk assessment and ensure the safety, because any accident, and if it happens, not only it may be detrimental, it can also have a negative impact on our purpose, that of popularizing the science to all, involving everybody in the science. That should be the key that should be the key lesson, and maybe it should be a key thing for us. So coming to that, a lot of things can be done. So I am now, because of paucity of time, and I wish to end my presentation with the quotation from the great philosopher Nietzsche. And in this quotation, he has emphasized that we have come through the 4 billion or 3 billion history from a single cell to the living species, which we call human beings. And he has given a concept of what is called Uberman, so superhuman. And the superhuman is much different than us and will be much better. And as we look at some other biological species, the kind of approach which we have, and we consider the ape and other things as a laughing stock, maybe the human being of present time will be considered as a laughing stock. But the most important point in this lesson is that we are not the end. And most of the society, so if you want to popularize the science, you have to popularize this point also, that we are not the end, we are just a link between the apes and the Ubermans, the next generation. So we are Homo sapiens, but we are not the end. We have to move and become Homo evolutus, and maybe that new species will appear. And definitely, as science tells you, the entire history of science tells you that there is no end, there is always a progress. And it has been, the quotation is from Friedrich Nietzsche's book on Thus Spoke Zarathustra. So we all know and understand that we are evolutions have designed us, and we are not designed to be happy, we are not designed to be perfect, and science has helped us to improve the world around us and to get benefit.
Professor Nagawat, we may...
I am concluding last slide.
Okay.
Last slide, and that is the disclaimer that the ideas and views which I have expressed are not completely my original ideas, and I have taken those things from various resources, but I have failed in giving proper credit during the presentation. So thank you very much for patient hearing. I have already concluded, and I pay my tribute to all great Indian scientists living and all Indian great scientists ancient. And thank you for providing me this opportunity to share my views.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Nagawat. We have with us the panelists. I think Dr. Datta has joined again. There is one question that we have just now, which I will first direct to, I think it is actually during Dr. Nagarjun's presentation that this came up. Regarding collaboration in education, what are the possible means? We also need to assess the competence of individuals and provide certification. This is assessment and evaluation issues coming into play. your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Actually, it's much better stated by directly showing one of the ideas that we have implemented. So let me share that. So hope you can see this part of the thing.
Yes. Yes.
So here what we're doing is that, see, when we use online education using technology, mostly it is used for delivery of content. But as I mentioned earlier, that if we actually use it for conversation, for example, and conversation as a model for engaging all the participants, both the teachers and students, then as the conversation happens, both in written as well as in other formats, what our platform does is it provides facility for the mentors as well as other people to, for example, give badges to people. And these badges don't happen at the end of the year. They keep happening every day. So this is the way how we have been granting badges for various things. For example, just to give you an idea, like when someone makes a post or asks a question, they get a badge for asking a question. And when someone replies, the reply doesn't always have to come from the teacher. It is also possible for the students can also start answering those questions. And when answers come and they also get a badge. So this is the way how the process of engagement itself can become a part of the assessment. And very, very interesting technologies in this sphere has been already been developed, and we are using the technology which is state of the art in terms of facilitating this kind of process recognition. So this enormously helps because the feedback is given almost instantly, and that is how we are helping the habit formation. As we're calling, these are academic habits, and these academic habits have to be reinforced by encouraging the students to participate more actively. So it is in this way that we promote collaboration practices in the classroom. This is of course one idea. This is also something that has been widely developed among the software developers across the country, across the world. If you, for example, ask a technical question, you normally go to a place called Stack Exchange, for example. The Stack Exchange is a place where a lot of questions are asked and people are answering them. So people get badges for asking questions. People get badges for answering, giving proper replies. And there are people who give votes to certain comments and things like that. So all these things are accumulated by the analytics of the platform. And this is possibly one best way an open university like IGNOU could possibly implement such things, so that you don't actually depend on the final exam as the only feedback, but because collaboration is something that happens every day. So this is a model that we adopt. You can graduate every afternoon.
Thank you, Nagarjun. I would just like to remind everybody that no questions are going to come directly. They have to be sent through chat to me or whatever, and will then be will be presented to the person you have it aimed at. Nagarjun, I'd just like to comment also on this NEP recommendation about making software solutions available free. Software solutions available to all educational institutions. The scheme called FOSSEE, FOSSEE. Now, of course, they say that developers like you develop them. It's a scale issue then. Is there another group going to take it further? And is this viable? Because a lot of ideas are now coming out that are depending on such utilizations. So what's your take on that?
Actually, the original draft of NEP did mention FOSSI. It does talk about the use of free and open source software, and also it mentions about the Creative Commons and use of open educational resources and things like that. But unfortunately, the final draft did not include all of that. It has been one of my complaints of what actually happened when we all actually sat down and drafted all those things and make sure that they appear. But it doesn't matter. There is, of course, a sense, and there is a shared sense that educational resources have to be made accessible to all. And also the technology that is required for supporting educational engagements also supposed to be made available to all. And it is in that sense that, both at IIT Bombay as well as at IIT Chennai and many other places, people are doing a lot of development work, including our lab at our place. And I think the scalability issues is one aspect, but the other important aspect is, distributing and creating decentralized systems. And there is very little innovation that happened so far, because everybody is interested in centralization. Using information technology for centralizing information has been a favorite for all the educational managers. Well, I think that is one major problem that I see in the passion for creating things. In fact, people are even talking about health cards and as well as student identities, just like the central identities and all that, which are not essential for pedagogy. We're actually diverting and looking at very incorrect use of technology, for things. I think we should focus more on engagement, promoting cognitive engagement, and making sure that learning happens for all, and but not on, for example, using centralization of all the data at one particular place.
Thank you. Dr. Datta, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here, madam.
I just have a question. But you see, because you're talking of capacity building in general, and we have a lot of people who have a lot of prior experience in science and technology on their own. I'm particularly talking from the ODL, open and distance learning point of view, or the conventional system. Now, they don't necessarily have a grade class 10 or class 12 certification with them, but they are innovative in their ways of thinking and so on. And like you were saying, schooling is often killing this spirit of innovation, the current way it goes about it. So what is your view when, should universities allow people with experience, give them weightage for prior learning, or, whether they've got the so-called formal background for joining certain innovative, skill-oriented programs?
Madam, actually, I will just, in response to these questions, I will divide my, the answers in three parts. The first of all, like as you told, that informal innovations, where there is not informal degree and these things. The current situations is that, what we talk about, like we have classified it as another innovations called, the grassroots innovations or the local innovations. And we have a National Innovation Foundation to handle that type of innovations and to bring it into the mainstream. That is one, the channel of the National Innovation Foundations. Now coming to that, like how this type of, the people can be bring into the main education system. I will start with the existing situation. You see that in any existing, the system, if a person is going to be promoted from one grade to the another grade, the criteria being used at how many publications and how many the students cited, but there is no the criteria like how many problems solved of the local area and these things. I think that is more important to bring it here, so that the entire academic the discourse is not only for the the structured learning system, but also for the problem solution system. And when we, we can include that, because this is one of the suggestions we have given. When we include that, this type of people who are basically finding solutions, there should be, overall the NEP gives these directives, the implementation directives are not there. All of us maybe as a recommendation should give that those people who are innovating for a solution should be given some sort of some sort of an grading on grading to be included into this total education. I think my this.
Yeah, thank you. There is another question. Seema, I assume this is from Dr. Kalra. I assume it is aimed at Dr. Datta. Are there any initiatives taken by the government to include the kind of approaches you're talking about, Dr. Datta, to promote innovation at the school, educational, for education and their education, as well as innovative education, obviously, at the school and in higher education levels, or tertiary education when it comes to vocational education?
Yeah, as I have told, there is this informal sectors that the National Innovation Foundation is working with the in general community, this Honeybee network, and where they
can't make out clearly what you're saying. Can you repeat that?
Okay. Yeah, I think there isn't some problem with the what I said, that one thing existing is within the Science and Technology Ministry is the National Innovation Foundation, where basically they are working with the grassroots level innovations with the the children, and also with the people who have not gone to the schools also. And also there is an Inspire program we have, that under the Inspire program, there is an we harnessed the ideas of the students, and if you see in the there are more than 1 million ideas is there, and some of them again in a small the project way are supported to take it forward. So that is from the school level, but at the higher education's level, at currently this is basically mostly at a school at the higher secondary level this is limited, but above that there is no currently it's not here.
Okay, Nagarjun, your views on this, please. And like you're saying that your badge, the badge idea that you have for collaborative learning is not recognized as now as evaluation, certification. So what would you like to say about all this, prior learning and other learning? Because Inspire is not recognizing that as prior learning. Yeah, you use the ideas and so on, take it, maybe give it some credence, but they still have to go through that same typical route.
Right. Well, I think, you see, many of these programs are being tried, and they, I would say, complement each other. But what I am actually trying to hit at is some kind of systemic change is required in the way how we are trying to assess the things. Because as you can see, there are two important areas that we have already taken care of very well in the current education system. One is problem solving, and the other is conceptual understanding. Because our examinations are essentially trying to check only these two aspects most of the time. So I am trying to look at, because the focus is on what kind of other aspects, the cognitive and affective aspects that we have, which actually contribute to the development of science. So take, for example, I think Professor Nagawat mentioned about some great names in his speech. For example, Faraday. Who was he? A bookbinder, but then he was literate. So a literate bookbinder, has enormous amount of affordances in terms of becoming a scientist, because he was reading while he was binding, and he was able to contribute back to science in a big way. And in fact, he revolutionized the understanding of electromagnetic phenomena, and that has come from someone who is just a literate person. So what can literacy provide, and how are these important aspects can actually get into? And the context for creativity and innovation has to come from, making things. The Inspire Fellowship, for example, doesn't always look at the possibilities of, this kind of things. They're still doing the same traditional model we have to get out of that. First of all, let me tell you, in a sense, more provocatively, in order to address innovation in science education, we have to be creative. We have to be innovative. Unless we get out of the thing, it's not possible that, we can solve these problems. And let me also say, a little, provocatively, for example, we have this plan from the Planning Commission. We call it now Niti Aayog. The project on Atal Tinkering Lab, for example, where this entire project is actually trying to give money first to certain schools and give them some resources and then say tinker. But tinkering doesn't happen by giving resources. In fact, when you constrain resources, innovation happens. And that is exactly what the cricket example clearly shows. That when they don't have resources, that is when innovation happens. And therefore, calling for innovation and tinkering, which is already there among the people of India, asking them to come for ideas doesn't require to have, Atal Tinkering Lab in the school to begin with. But what is required is, how do you create an engagement in the classroom? How do you convert your classroom into a studio, for example? Can you have a maker space instead of classrooms? In fact, that has been one of our major issues. So why can't we have a chatshala instead of patshala? And a makershala instead of a patshala? How long we are going to continue delivering lessons when they are not even required? So I think we have to think out of the box, and we have to be very innovative on these respects.
Yep, Professor Sinclair, what Dr. Nagaraja is saying, just to supplement that, I think I just wanted to bring 2 points. He has rightly told that in order to innovation, first of all, we have to innovate. We have to change. In the government, we feel that we will run an innovation program, but I will not be innovative because the system doesn't allow. Because first of all, our system is risk averse. So anyone going out of the comfort zone, nobody is ready to go out of the comfort zone. Then the second point, the point what he has brought it, probably if you from all the corners we can bring it, even in the NEP or whether it is a STIP implementation, our financial system needs to be looked at this knowledge as a different commodity. The financial system, the way they work within economic good, they also try to implement the same rule and the law for this, the common good like knowledge. So as a result, the person who is in the finance, he feels like if you are doing the way you are generating the, in the railway ministry, the same way you will do in the science and technology, because the risk taking is at the of the rail, dabba creations and generating 1,000 innovative students are not the same. Because we are dealing with 2 different goods. One is the common good and the other is an economic good. So this needs to be, from all the corners, at least from your part, this needs to be raised. Unless and until this system changes, he is right that, our entire thing is the, projectizations and giving money, and then if we feel that things will change, but it doesn't change because inherently we are not, we are averse to the change system.
Just wanted to add to one very important point, that the effectiveness of this Atal Tinkering Lab is in counting how many labs and how much money has been granted.
Exactly.
Nobody is looking
that cannot be indicated.
Nobody is looking at what kind of engagement.
Outcome. Nobody is looking into. Everybody is looking into physical number of the outputs, and that is the way Niti Aayog is looking into it.
In fact, I will even
sitting in the government, sitting in government office. I'm commenting on my personal mistake.
Yes. In fact, I would say, Yeah, I would say don't even look at the outcome, look at the engagement process, first of all. So the focus has to be on the engagement process and not even on the outcomes.
Yeah, the quality of thinking, how is that changed?
Yeah,
that is important.
Because nobody is considering it. Nobody is considering it.
I have a question for Professor Nagawal. What about the USTTAD scheme? This is the upgrading the skills and training in traditional arts and crafts for development, which the Ministry of Minority Affairs runs. Can something like that is something like that being thought of for science, developing skills of science learning and taking science education further?
We, Madam, have certain programs in my university also and the earlier universities where we have tried to propagate the idea and outreach to the people at large. And there are many schemes through which one can educate the people at large in science programs. Earlier we had a science education center. I could not, because of some hearing problem, hear your question properly. But I would like to add one point here that it has been often emphasized in India that the Indian people have great intelligence and they can do the jugaad, and so we are known for jugaad. So what we have been emphasizing that reach to the people who have jugaad capacity, give them basic science education, what science, because jugaad can be converted into a product. There is a difference in when you make a jugaad, then you compromise on certain securities and certain aspects which science otherwise don't allow you to do. So if we can teach them, so the gene is already there and we can train them to be a great innovators. So in my university, we are trying to find people who are really interested in doing something, maybe having no education, like as pointed out, recognition of prior learning. That we are providing, for example, my university programs, that why cannot a samosa wala can become a chef in hotel. So a samosa wala who is just making samosa for a thadi and selling certain products, he should be approached. He has no idea that he can get a qualification, he can improve his learning and training and can make a better career. So similar approaches should be tried by the universities at large. National education policy has a very beautiful feature which I have been advocating, and that is the flexibility. So let us be, all the Bachelor of Science programs be flexible. N number of components I want to take from biological sciences or psychology or from statistics or computational science, I must have a freedom. But what I have faced that when I was Dean Faculty of Science at University of Rajasthan, our faculty need a program to convince them that this flexibility will work. Everybody wants that what he is good at should be learned by the students. So the best part of the NEP, to my understanding, for science education is that it focuses on student-centric learning. And what I say that higher education has a purpose. It should be driven by a dream, a vision for life, or a purpose for life. Anybody who goes for higher education should have something that I wants to make a contribution to the society. And that contribution which he wants to make can only be achieved by attaining expertise. And we should, as a university, be a facilitator. And I am very hopeful that your university can do a lot because there are less restrictions. When you work in university like University of Rajasthan or skilled universities, there are many restrictions which are there, which an open university can do away with. And we cannot do because we have bodies, we have academic councils, we have board of studies, there are different philosophy, people with different philosophies, arguing and giving different argument and not coming to the right conclusion and path for propagating science education. So I am just saying, last word from my side is that India claims to be training large number of STEM graduates or large number of engineering graduates, science graduates. But our contribution in real terms to the science and engineering and technology is very little. Just an example for you, that we in Rajasthan, we have a lot of talented people, engineers who have come from Rajasthan. These Rajasthani students performing very well in IITs also. But there was a problem for the ladies of Barmer that they had to carry a lot of matkas on their head. and it was causing a lot of problem. And so who had invented a solution from them? The innovation came from New Jersey, and it is known as, you can search on Google, water wheel. So water wheel is not a magical innovation. Water wheel can come into existence only because they have a real sense of belonging to a way of thinking called science. So unless our people, if they think that just I want to be, because everybody wants to be an engineer or a doctor and is pursuing science only for that purpose, so that will not be an honest thing to do, in my personal opinion. I have been trying wherever I get an opportunity. I have been emphasizing key in delivering science education, we have to be very, very honest. And if we keep on delivering science education also in the same manner, like we deliver social science education sometimes, history or political science, we are not honest in teaching those subjects also sometimes. But there it can work. And now the society is science and technology dominated, so we have to make it so. That's the...
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Nagawat. I would just like to over here mention, since it was brought up by you, IGNOU is very much a university with all those boards that you spoke of that any conventional university has. You may like to put off your or mute your mics. That any conventional university has, IGNOU has all of those, and in fact, IGNOU was the first university to really work out this scheme of moving across disciplines, allowing learners to take courses from different disciplines to make up the program. Then, because of the inflexibility of the system at large, IGNOU has been curbed. And recently, the CBCS that has come up by the UGC is a very, very curbed version for us, though it's a more open version for the conventional system of what we were offering. So with this, I would just like to say thank you to all of the panelists and others who have been with us, everybody. Thank you so much and for this very, very interesting, enlightening discussion that we've had that has, coughed up several recommendations. And it could actually, it's very true that we're really short of time because each of the short presentation actually required another hour, if not more, for looking at more closely. So thank you so much for that. And I hand back to Professor Kamalika Banerjee. Thank you. Professor Banerjee?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Professor Sinclair. So it was a wonderful morning, continued till afternoon today. And we have already been live in Gyan Darshan Facebook, and we are very indebted to all the panelists, Dr. G. Nagarjuna, Dr. Debapriya Datta, and Professor Ashok Nagawat, and our Professor Parveen Sinclair for moderating the entire session. And there has been a request from the some people that the posters were not visible. So I'm doing it again. Can you view this now?
No.
Is it visible?
No. No.
I don't know what is happening with the poster.
Maybe we can put it on the site and people can see it later. For just now, I think we should wind up.
Yeah, I think I would also express my sincere thanks to all the
Director Madam, maybe Kamalika can first wind up. Oh, it's come on. It has come on.
Your presentation has come up. Presentation has come up.
Great, yeah.
People may please mute their mics.
Yes, thank you. And I sincerely thank all the members of my Seminar and Cultural Committee for being actively participating for the making of this, apart from Professor Sinclair, who motivated us towards this panel discussion. So over to Dr. Manisha for delivering the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Professor Kamalika. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Seminar and Cultural Committee, School of Sciences, as well as on my personal behalf, first of all, my sincere thanks to Almighty for making today's event a grand success. Today, we had the opportunity to hear brainstorming thoughts on skills and innovation from esteemed panelists, Dr. G. Nagarjun, Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, TIFR, Mumbai, Dr. Debapriya Datta, Head, National Geospatial Program, Government of India, and Professor Ashok Nagawat, Director, Skill Education, Rajasthan ILD Skill University. Your deliberations has definitely enlightened our minds and provided good food for thought. Thank you all for adorning the occasion and sharing your opinions today. We really feel privileged that despite your engaging schedules, you agreed to join us for this panel discussion. My sincere gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nageshwar Rao, for rock-solid support and encouragement. Without your support, we would never be able to excel. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us and the inaugural address. A special mention to moderator, Professor Parveen Sinclair, being the catalyst that inspired us to do our best and stand as a pillar of power. With a deep sense of appreciation, we thank you, ma'am, for your untiring efforts. I'm also obliged to all the Pro-Vice Chancellors, Directors of Schools, Heads of Units and Divisions, our colleagues at headquarters and at regional centers all across the country for joining us and making this event successful. My sincere thanks to all of you. I extend my heartfelt thanks to the people who work behind the scene to execute this event, Director EMPC for broadcast on Gyan Darshan, CPRO for FB Live, and IGNOU social media team for wide publicity and circulation. Also, thanks are due to IGNOU learners who enthusiastically participated and submitted posters for Science Day celebration, and to our Director, School of Sciences, Professor Sujata Verma, for being constant source of inspiration. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the Seminar and Cultural Committee, SOS, for pulling up the show. Certainly this type of event could not happen overnight. The wheels started moving about months ago. It required planning and bird's eye view for details. We have been fortunate to be supported by a team of very active and dedicated leadership at IGNOU. I lack words to acknowledge their participation and willingness to help beyond their comfort zones. Here, I would like to end with a quote from Rosalind Franklin, a lady whose contributions helped us unravel the structure of DNA. Science and everyday life cannot and should not be separated. एक बार पुनः हृदय तल से विभिन्न आभासी माध्यमों से हमसे जुड़े सभी सुधीजनों का आभार, साधुवाद. Professor Kamalika.
Thank you, Dr. Manisha. And really, it was a wonderful experience to organize this. And I thank each and every one of you, and especially the Seminar and Cultural Committee, Dr. Rajesh from Statistics, Dr. Manisha from Biochemistry, Dr. Omkar from Geology, Dr. Satya from Geography, Dr. Shubhalakshmi from Physics, Dr. Deepika from Mathematics, and Dr. Neera Kapoor from Life Sciences. So we end up the whole celebrations for today by remembering a quote from C.V. Raman. It was poverty and the poor laboratories that gave me the determination to do the very best I could. Yes, in a nutshell, that is the source of innovations. Thank you all. Now over to Professor Verma, our director, if she wants to say a few words at the end.
Thank you all for your when having participated and make this, especially to my cultural and seminar committee. And as I again want to repeat that this is just the beginning of our activities, and I hope that this cultural committee we will have more of these such programs. And I'm thankful to all my colleagues and everybody. And I wish and especially I take this opportunity to express my felicitation to all the scientists who have contributed for the field of development in science, and especially to all my colleagues and everybody for the field of science. And my felicitations on this National Science Day. Yeah. Yes.
चलिए मैं जा रही हूँ, छुट्टी ले लिया मैंने।
तो हमें भी हो गया। अरे मीटिंग से खत्म हो गई ना। कमल का, I hope it's over.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great show. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just meet virtually the members of Seminar and Cultural Committee? Can you remain to just have a chit chat?